is up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Franca and I'm glad you're here. Today we're going over Justin's lawsuit against Blake and Ryan Reynolds. If you haven't been following along with me, I've been reading everything from all the documents. Why? I don't know at this point. But at this point, like, I have to finish. I'm giving my opinions and adding information in along the way. But with that said, let's get right into it. The following is not a story plaintiffs ever wished to tell. Unfortunately, defendant Blake Lively has unequivocally left them with no choice, not only to set the record straight in response to Lively's accusations, but also to put the spotlight on the parts of Hollywood that they have dedicated their careers to being the antithesis of, whatever the heck that is. That task was always going to be an uphill battle. They had never imagined they would encounter it to this degree. Had Lively chosen to merely write out the self-inflicted press catastrophe she faced in August 2024, the public would likely have moved on and never known the truth about her. They would have never known that she deliberately and systematically robbed plaintiffs Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios LLC of their movie. No one except the parties involved would have known that she used threats and extortion to relegate the colleagues she once highly praised to a basement to sit out their own premiere. While she enjoyed the spotlight of a premiere and after-party that was ultimately co-financed by both Wayfair and Sony, she would have gotten away with these things and more because Baldoni, focused entirely on seeing the film succeed, would have held his tongue as he had through the year and a half that Lively tormented him, his family, and his partners. But Lively could not tolerate her public tainted image for even a moment, and further could not accept that it was entirely of her own making. She needed a scapegoat, and rather than admit and take accountability for her own mishaps, she chose to blame plaintiffs in a malicious and unforgivably public manner. When she and Reynolds could not force Baldoni and Wayfair to read a statement she and her representatives prepared, exhorting them to take accountability in defense of Lively's actions, she lay in wait for months, preparing to publicly attack Baldoni by falsely claiming he had sex harassed her. The same falsified stories she had devised, and used throughout the production of the film in order to take control were now being used publicly to destroy Baldoni and plaintiffs. Lively stole Wayfair's movie, hijacked Wayfair's premiere, destroyed plaintiffs' personal and professional reputations and livelihood, and aimed to drive plaintiffs out of business entirely. It further appears that Lively worked for months with the equally powerful New York Times to prepare a false and damaging narrative to deploy against plaintiffs. Not surprisingly, Lively prepared an administrative complaint with the Civil Rights Department in California, in an attempt to use the litigation privilege to shield her behind-the-scenes conspiracy with the New York Times. But upon information and belief, the CRD complaint was filed only after defendants spent months feeding falsehoods to the New York Times, intending that they be disseminated to damage plaintiffs. Lively delivered the CRD complaint to plaintiffs over the Christmas holiday, and rather than promptly file a lawsuit, Lively, on information and belief, leaked the typically private CRD complaint to the public, utilizing the New York Times as a conduit for her revenge. This CRD complaint, and upon information and belief, the false information delivered to the New York Times before CRD complaint was filed, was rife with lies and doctored evidence. Lively then waited 11 days to file against plaintiffs, in what seemed to be a desperate move after the public questioned why she had never filed a civil lawsuit. On information and belief, Lively never intended to file a civil lawsuit, which would have triggered plaintiffs' right to discovery, including obtaining evidence and deposing Lively under oath. By the time Lively actually filed a lawsuit against plaintiffs, the damage to plaintiffs was done by virtue of Lively's months of colluding with the New York Times on a false and malicious narrative, unshielded by any privilege. Make no mistakes, these actions were deliberate. Yeah, that's what I think is so weird. If this CRD complaint is supposed to be, like, private, unless it is leaked, Justin's team definitely would not do that, because why would you leak a story that makes your client look bad? You know what I mean? So someone on Blake's team or Blake had to have done it, right? But then, like, why is she now, obviously now we know she's trying to put a gag order on Justin's lawyer because he said he was gonna, like, destroy her in the courtroom or whatever. And I think that didn't go through. I think they had, like, their meeting today, I think. And I don't think it went through. But that's just weird. Like, why try and do things publicly, by giving this CRD complaint to the New York Times, but then also on the other hand say, Justin, actually, you can't say anything about this. I'm the only one who gets to say my side of the story. When, as I mentioned before, like, Justin goes in full detail of, like, what was happening, why he said what he was saying, and, like, the situation behind it, and what she was saying in the conversation as well, which gives us a lot more context, whereas Blake Lively just said, he told me this. No backstory, no nothing, anything. Just, he told me this, and this is why I think this. Plaintiffs now have no choice but to fight back, armed only with the truth and the mountain of concrete evidence disproving Lively's allegations. Heartbreakingly, a film that Baldoni envisioned years ago would honor the survivors of DV by telling their stories with a lofty goal of making a positive impact on the world, has now been overshadowed beyond recognition solely as a result of Lively's actions and cruelty. Lively wields immense power as one of the world's best-known celebrities. In 2024, she used that power to seize control of the film It Ends With Us, produced and co-financed by plaintiff Wayfair, directed by Baldoni, who also portrayed the lead Ryle. She set out to destroy plaintiffs' livelihoods and business if they did not bend to her incessant demands. When they refused to give way, she did exactly that, accusing them of foul and reprehensible sex misconduct. Wayfair was blindsided when Lively, upon the conclusion of the industry strikes, refused to return to production, absent the company's agreeing to her non-negotiable protections for a return to production that insinuated misconduct had occurred during filming, which, as evidence will establish, did not. Wayfair was equally blindsided when Lively leveraged this document, essentially signed under duress, to seize control of the film, ultimately getting her own cut of the film and a coveted PGA mark, and at her command ousting Baldoni from all marketing and promotional efforts with many of the cast members and the author, all of whom he until then had long-standing positive relationships with. Lively's exclusion of Baldoni from the promotion of the film backfired when she chose to callously promote her hair care line and alcohol beverage products rather than bringing attention to survivors of DV, the entire premise of the film. Baldoni, now prohibited from attending events or taking photos with Lively and the cast, promoted the film that he had always intended, ever since he first began the process of making the film years ago. When Lively faced significant public backlash, which was often referred to as her tone-deaf and insensitive press tour for the film, she doubled down on her false and misleading accusations against Baldoni. She seemed determined to make Baldoni the real-life villain in her story. Her publicist, Leslie Salone, went as far as to propagate malicious stories portraying Baldoni as an sex predator, a term Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds, also used to describe Baldoni when he called Baldoni's own agent. Modern society justly reviles sex harassers and abusers, and Lively knew full well that making those allegations would be a career death sentence for plaintiffs, especially given that Baldoni has lived his private and public life as an impassioned advocate for gender equality and healthy masculinity. She did not expect, however, that plaintiffs would be able to meet those allegations with concrete documentary evidence, disproving her claims and demonstrating that they, not Lively, were the targets of a calculated and vitriolic smear campaign. That evidence, included in part herein, is the basis for plaintiffs' claims against defendants for their extortion, defamation, and further wrongdoing. The film was the hotly anticipated adaptation of the worldwide best-selling book by Colleen Hoover, and by starring in it as Lily, Lively stood to enhance her already considerable star power. But she was not content merely to headline one of the year's biggest movies. Instead, apparently driven by overweening ambition and need for control, Lively eventually leveraged her power as a wealthy celebrity to wrestle the reins from her co-star and the film's director, Baldoni, insisting on total control over every aspect of the film she could get her hands on, from wardrobe to marketing strategy to music, even creating her own cut of the film. Not only did Lively's power play cost numerous people their jobs, but at every turn her wrong-headed creative decisions reflected her fundamental lack of understanding of the book the film was based on. This came as no surprise to her worried colleagues, given that, even well into production, Lively had not even read the book. I feel like that is the only time someone should force you to read their book. Because if you are going to portray this character, you need to know, like, get into their mindset. You need to read about them. You know what I mean? Because I can tell you, yeah, she's this, this, and this, but, like, you know what I mean? Reading it is something completely different, especially since It Ends With Us is such a beloved book on Book Talk. I personally didn't like it. I thought it sucked. But so many people love this book. And to not even have read the book as an actor in the book, I feel like is like a crime against book talk in a way. September 14th, 2023, text messages from Justin to Heath. They were rooting to see her fulfill. After rereading the book, which had 150 pages to build a relationship, we have combined scenes to heighten the stakes for Ryle in pursuit of Lily, utilizing humor and his desire to sleep with her. While I understand Blake's reasons for not wanting to read the book does a very good job in getting in Lily's mind during her interactions with Ryle, and setting up the why behind her attraction to him, which ultimately helps us understand why she stays in the end. Lively's disastrous marketing efforts and tone-deaf press interviews and appearance backfired and led to widespread criticism of Lively's promotional approach to the film's highly sensitive focus on DV. Past videos of Lively resurfaced online, videos that appeared to solidify public perception that Lively was an insensitive mean girl who cared more about peddling her products than acknowledging the DV survivor community. Social media commenters quickly pointed out that her tie-in of her alcoholic beverages was in particularly poor taste, given that World Health Organization estimates that 55 of DV incidents are linked to alcohol. Unbelievably, Lively made this harmful and irresponsible message worse by naming a drink at her premiere after party, Ryle You Wait, after the character who committed DV in the film. The suggestion that Wayfair caused the online backlash against her is absurd given the evidence of her own insensitivity. See, but I feel like naming a drink after a character in the book, I feel like coincides with Colleen Hoover trying to make a coloring book about DV. There's no need for this coloring book when you have such a deep traumatic topic, and all of the people who were like in love with Colleen's book were like, absolutely not, this is so tone deaf, like you shouldn't release this product. So I feel like that's kind of in the same realm. And also, not only did she do a book, she did nail polishes. Crazy. Like, that's so unbelievably weird. And what I think happens is these people are delulu in a way. Like, they are so unbelievably tone deaf. The way I see it is Colleen Hoover was like, oh my god, everyone loves this book. I need to capitalize off this. I need to make merch. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need everything. And that's the problem. I feel like they make all this stuff. There's no like reason behind it. There's no like touching story behind it of like why this product is helpful or beneficial to anything to do with the book. But like she ultimately did that to herself. But to be honest, because Blake and Colleen are on the same side in this Justin versus Blake little fight, little drama they have going on here, it doesn't surprise me that Blake marketed the movie this way, not one bit. Because she's not doing the same exact things Colleen Hoover did, but she has that same tone-deaf response that Colleen Hoover had. And I feel like that's probably why Colleen Hoover's siding with her and why Colleen Hoover sees no wrong with what Blake's doing, because she would have done the same thing if she was in Blake's spot. Sadly, this backlash could have been avoided had she not refused to meet with the film's DV partner organization, nomore.org, as Baldoni had offered. Even a brief visit to their website or a simple online search would have readily uncovered this and other information on the topic of DV. Meanwhile, Baldoni, who Lively herself had ensured was excluded from participating in her marketing efforts, was safeguarded from this backlash as he focused on amplifying the voices of those affected by DV, as originally intended when he reached out to author Colleen Hoover 5 years earlier, and documented this by his partnership with nomore.org dating back to 2022. Baldoni's sincere efforts were well received, even more so in contrast with Lively's campaign to downplay the premise of the film and sell hair care and alcohol products. Lively, enraged that her plans were foiled and armed with proof of alleged sex harassment in the form of a 17-point list of demands she required plaintiffs to sign just months earlier, focused her rage on Baldoni, blaming him for the consequences of her own missteps. Meanwhile, Stephanie Jones, founder of Jones Work LLC, Wayfair and Baldoni's erstwhile PR firm, was embroiled in a personal and professional crisis. Her increasingly erratic behavior had driven away not only high-profile clients, but also her right-hand woman, plaintiff Jennifer Abel, who oversaw the Jones-Work Los Angeles offices. Jones's behavior grew more and more bizarre as she lashed out at loyal clients like Wayfair in rage-filled rants and veered away from professional experience and strategy with making critical decisions affecting Jones-Work clients. After a final outburst against Wayfair in which she outright refused to comply with their direct instructions, Wayfair had no choice but to cut ties with Jones and Jones-Work rather than leave their public image in the hands of what appeared to be an out-of-control Jones, whose actions were not aligned with Wayfair and Baldoni's worldview and wishes. Jones was filled with the impotent rage at Wayfair and at Abel, who a month before had announced her decision to leave Jones-Works to form her own company. Jones saw an opportunity for revenge. She took it. On information and belief, Jones, Lively, Reynolds, and Leslie Salone, Lively's publicist, and others concocted a plan whereby Jones would seize Abel's phone under her departure and mine it for messages that, stripped of context, could be used to concoct a false narrative that the disastrous press coverage of Lively's callous and opportunistic comments and the public reaction to those comments were not Lively's fault at all, but the result of a calculated, though in reality non-existent, smear campaign by Baldoni and his team. On information and belief, Jones' role in this scheme accounts for her conspicuous absent from Lively's retelling of the events. Plaintiffs are informed and believe that defendants had been working concert since at least August 21st, 2024, when Salone boasted to Nathan that she had seen her text and that Nathan would soon be sued. Though Lively claimed Baldoni was the one smearing her, the reality is that it was Lively and her team who carefully planned and implemented a vile smear campaign against Baldoni and Wayfair to deflect attention and blame for Lively's disastrous misjudgments. Lively would recast herself as the long-suffering martyr by portraying Baldoni and Wayfair as her persecutors. The masterminds behind a smear campaign, the evidence will show, did not exist. Defendant Salone of Vision PR was all too willing to carry out this strategy, especially once armed with ammunition by Jones, who was bent on revenge against her ex-employee and former client. Shortly after the film's premiere and the public backlash against Lively, together with her husband, defendant Ryan Reynolds, demanded through their talent agency, which also represented Wayfair and Baldoni, that plaintiffs publicly apologize for so-called mistakes during production in order to deflect the avalanche of negative media coverage of Lively. Reynolds and Lively drafted a statement and demanded that Baldoni, Wayfair, and Heath issue that statement, requiring them to apologize to the public and fall on their sword, despite having done nothing wrong, or else the gloves would come off. Multiple WME executives acknowledged that in their experience, Lively and Reynolds' threats were not to be taken lightly, though admitting a false, vague, unspecified mistakes would be tantamount the heck are these words? To admitting to career-ending misconduct. Baldoni, Wayfair, and Heath refused to apologize for sins they never committed. They took a stand knowing full well that Lively and Reynolds would bring the full might of their celebrity artillery against them. That is precisely what happened. Lively, working with her husband, her publicist, and Jones, among others, set out on a campaign to tar and feather plaintiffs in the press. They conspired and worked in concert with the New York Times to put out a blockbuster news report as devastating as it was false. They advanced a fabricated narrative in the press that plaintiffs had sex harassed Lively, then embarked on a calculated and malicious smear campaign to destroy her reputation as retaliation for daring to complain about the harassment. Defendants laid their trap carefully over a period of months before springing it all at once on the eve of the winter holidays. Just as plainly, they knew full well that their claims were entirely baseless, because their own wrongfully obtained evidence proved that neither the alleged sex harassment nor the accompanying smear campaign against Lively ever existed. Yet Lively moved forward with her plan with ruthless precision, doubling down on the face of abundant evidence casting down on the veracity of her story. Lively even went as far to serve her lawsuit on the Los Angeles-based defendants as they evacuated their homes in the midst of devastating fires engulfing their city, on a day when defendants were gathering their kids and pets, preparing to-go bags, and monitoring evacuation orders while fearing for their homes. Lively, from the safety of her penthouse in New York, deployed process servers in the midst of these troubling times. That's crazy though, like, because they have to send someone to like serve him. They literally sent them in the fires. Crazy. You think they'd like wait till after the fire. So I think that's like a little weird. Whether she did it or not, we have no idea. But with that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like and comment down below. If you didn't, feel free to leave a hate comment. I'd love to hear your opinion. I'll see you guys tomorrow.